Luckily, I do have most of my sellers, or all of my sellers right now, that are saying, I want to do whatever it takes to sell the property.
Right.
The timing of this is kind of whack in my mind because not only it went into effect in late August, mid August, we hit this kind of end of the year. The natural ebbs and flows of the market are already kind of wonky at this time, right? We back to school, things kind of slow down. We're getting to the holidays. Interest rates haven't come down. It's an election year. There's just so many variables that are playing into kind of this. I don't know. Where do you think the market is? Let's segue just quickly into that.
Like right now,
Yeah, how do you guys feel
I
about the
I
market?
feel like there's more inventory coming out. I
Yep.
feel like the market is it's just kind of at a, in my opinion, I feel like is soft. It's softer than it normally is, right? I don't know if this NAR settlement has anything to do with it. I think it does a little bit, but I think it's just I think buyers are sitting on the fence right now, and the market is just not as predictable as it used to be, right? I mean, when you take a listing,
100%.
we
I
take a
agree.
listing right now. Is it going to sell at the price we think it's going to sell? I don't know.
Well, kind of the standard was, and at least for as long as I've really been in this, was 30-day contract, 30 days to, excuse me, about 2 weeks on the market, 30-day escrow, contingencies week or two, and the deal's done. Now we're seeing homes stay on the market anywhere, what do you think, like 30 to 45
At
days
least,
if it's a even turnkey home.
yeah, a decent house. We have a decent house right now that should be
It's
sold right now,
it's not
and it's still sitting on the market,
and it's not out
and it's priced competitively. Like,
totally.
what's going on?
I would tell you that I agree that the market is getting softer, and I think that a lot of sellers are looking at it from a standpoint of if I list low or aggressively per se, that I'm going to get someone still who's going to offer less. And so a lot of sellers have the mindset of pricing a little bit of cushion to expect that seller to come in and not offer them less, so they're building it into the list price.
It's more like, to me, it's kind of more like car sales than home sales these days. It's
Yes.
like you're going higher with the expectation that someone's going to come in lower
Exactly.
rather than pricing it competitively with the expectation that you'll get multiple offers and get your number or higher.
So it goes into the category of where does your house sit? Is it like the A bucket, turnkey, great neighborhood, amenities are amazing, pride of ownership, right? So we all know like if that's priced competitively or even a little higher, you should go because that's just one of those A houses in the A bucket. You got the B bucket, and it's kind of like the cosmetic fixer-upper. Like, unfortunately, the cosmetic fixer-uppers, they think they should get what the A bucket should get,
Right.
which is not true, right? Because they may need carpets, paint, etc., right? And in my personal opinion, these have to be a little bit, that you have to price them more competitively in order for you to move them. And then you got the complete fixer-upper, right? And the fixer-upper is like, hey, listen, you got to get it out there. I don't want to say it's a loss leader, but you got to be aggressive just to move it. So I think it all depends on the inventory that we're having, the location, and I think all of those plays a big factor into what we're going to list. Here in the Bay Area, and we're so close to so many different counties, every board location has a different strategy. You guys know as soon as we cross that bridge into Vallejo, a lot of the agents in Solano County moving up north don't provide any inspection reports.
Yeah.
Right.
So now we have that to deal with. And then if you go down further south, everything's an extreme. Like
Yeah.
you submit an offer, you better submit everything plus your AVIT. Boom. We want it all there. So I think that location plays a big part of where the price point is on houses. So it's not a one size fits all, but I would say to my clients, the market is soft. This is not a time to be playing around. Put it at what what you feel you can accept and give yourself a little bit of a wiggle room to go a little lower, but don't pad it. I think the worst thing you can do is pad a listing and it sits there. So anyway, that's my feel. I just don't. I think it's just depending on location, and we have so many micro markets in where we work at that again, condos and townhouses and houses that are like premium lots and so forth. So I think
Right.
it depends. Yeah.
What do you think of that strategy where people list properties low, and then 2 weeks later they don't get the offers they want or the activity they want, and they do the whole transparent pricing. They bring it from their low price to up $100,000 and reprice it, and then put transparent pricing in the confidential remarks. What do you think of that strategy? Honestly,
I'm really torn on it because I've seen situations where I think it's confusing. I think it's confusing to a lot of people. I'm still pretty torn on it. There's a few cases where I've seen it work, and it's really interesting to me. But I think we're still coming out of this time where transparent pricing wasn't really and hasn't really been our thing in our area, right? At least in our area, we can talk about the Bay Area. It hasn't really been a thing. So to list something super low and then to make it transparent, yeah, you might get a buyer that's like, okay, at least you're showing your cards, but I think they're also going to be a little confused on why you were $999 last week and now you're at $1 million,
$1,000,001, yeah.
I think the worst thing that could happen to a seller is to list a property at a certain price point and you receive no offers, and maybe you get one offer at your list price. And if you don't react and get it in contract, and then you counter them at let's hypothetically $500,000, and you counter at 525, that really irks the buyer. It's like, if you wanted 525, place 525. So my point is that you got to be very careful on your pricing, careful what you wish for. If you have transparent pricing per se and you don't accept it, not good. Not good on your property, not good on your strategy. I'm a firm believer that the seller should have enough input to list a piece of property, and if they're going higher than what you expect where you feel the property should be, the conversation should be, if it doesn't sell within 2 weeks, we're going here, and you should have a strategy in place that you as a realtor can fall back on. The worst thing you can do, and we've seen in this market, when we had a house up on the hill for over $1 million, sat there for a long period of time, went off the market, came back with a lower price point, and it sells within a short period of time. So I think
did it sell for the original list price?
I don't think it sold for the original list price, because it was higher than original list price, and then it was listed lower than the original list price, and it bought in the middle.
So the market just spoke.
The market spoke, and it was the price. New list price was more conducive to what the property expectations were.
Okay.
And then you had someone that felt a little bit more value.
I think another issue at hand here, and this whole new agreement and settlement is going to really bring to light, is all of the agents who kind of jumped in the COVID market. And not to bash any new agents, there's plenty of great ones out there, but it was everybody and their mama could get their license in roughly 2020 to 2021, 22. And I think that kind of the art of negotiation has been forgotten. I was just having this conversation with Helico the other day. We were saying that agents and even buyers or their clients think that, oh, we offered $1 million, they came back at $1,050,000. We don't want $1,050,000, so we're just out. And it's like that kind of art. I think the art of negotiation is coming back and has to come back. It's kind of that ping pong back and forth. At the end of the day, negotiation is never both sides getting exactly what they want, but it's reaching a compromise that ultimately makes both sides happy.
Right.
And that's what our goal is, right? We're all here to make our client happy and to get them something that they're at least happy enough with. It may not be, every seller thinks their home is worth $2 million.
Oh, and they get angry at us when we don't think their property is worth. We want to sell it at the highest possible.
Yeah,
that's our goal. I mean, we want that. We want to sell it for way more than what you know. But so we get blamed for that. If you don't think their property is worth more.
And I think that's the important thing about these buyers that are unrepresented going out there and not knowing these things. It's like, that's why you need a professional on your side. That's why you need an agent that knows what they're doing and that knows that, hey, this might be a no, but let's find a yes. Let's find a path to a yes. And I think that art, like I keep saying, the art of negotiation is just lost, and people don't really know how to ping pong back and forth. It's never so cut and dry. COVID market was very different. Here's my non-contingent offer. I'll give you this, and I'll give you $10,000, $20,000 over appraised value if it doesn't, appraise, because I want this house so bad. Those days are gone. That was a very niche time, and we're not seeing those, 3% interest rates where money is so accessible and super cheap.
Right.
You bring up a really good point. By the way, I sent you the form. I texted to you.
Oh, yeah.
So you can look at it as I make my point on this subject. You hit it right on the head about agents and being able to negotiate, right? And I think that anyone out there listening to this is that any agent that you hire, in my personal opinion, should be very well versed, up to date on what's going on in today's market. Okay, because if you don't have the skill set to understand all the new forms that are happening, not to be so rigid but fluid, be able to negotiate so you can get the deal done, as you mentioned. Yes, we all want to sell at the highest price. The seller's interest is our interest if we're representing the seller. And if you're on the other side of buyer, obviously you're trying to negotiate something where it's competitive for the buyer and you're doing your fiduciary responsibility for them. We all want to get it done, okay? And I think that, to your point, agents out there during COVID found it so easy to get into a transaction, into a deal.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
not the way. That is not happening today because now there's so many moving parts from a buyer standpoint, commission standpoint, to the seller, and everything we're covering today. You really need to have an experienced person to represent you on either side. Because if you don't, and I'm going to go here, and you know me, sometimes I
Go there, please.
you can have Aunt Susie who's working a full-time job over here, and and she's hanging her license with one brokerage, and Aunt Susie's done no deals.
Yep.
Right.
And then Aunt Susie all of a sudden is put in a fire line to go negotiate the most important investment in your life, and you're putting everything on Aunt Susie.
Right. Aunt Susie.
Aunt Susie.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to have Aunt Susie fly the plane if she hasn't flown the plane.
Right.
Right? I'm not doing it. I'm going to have Aunt Susie operate on me, and she's like, never operated. Right? I mean, and I'm just saying that this is where we're at today.
Yeah.
So if you want that house and you want to sell at the highest price, or you want to get into a house, I was just listening to the news today. Really interesting. One lady looked for 3 years to get a property. 3 years, submitting so many offers. I'm not saying she had the wrong agent. Might be Aunt Susie. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that you need the best person there today who is who can negotiate, who knows their contracts, who's a deal maker, not a deal breaker.
Yep.
Okay, because if you can't make the deal, and I'll give you an example. I mean, this has just happened to me on this transaction. Agent was more interested in his commission than the transaction, right? $3,700 it came down to, because
Wow.
And I'm not getting into the details, but it came down to his compensation, and this is why we got a bad name, because it was about his money, not the transaction. Unfortunately for my seller, we had to sell versus canceling deal, going back on the market. That's not the right approach. That's not the right approach. You're not negotiating in good faith. I'm trusting in you. We're in contract that we're going to get it done, and we're going to walk away feeling good about the transaction, all parties. But when that doesn't happen, there's some missteps, and you got to check yourself, because someone's not doing their job right.
Right.
This is not complicated, but you need to know what you're doing.
I agree. Yeah.
Go hire Aunt Susie.
Sorry, Aunt Susie.
Sorry, Aunt Susie.
Susie's out there like, damn.
How are we doing on time?
I think.
Okay.
How do we think this is going to increase professionalism? I think we've kind of covered that, but I think it's definitely going to hold agents more accountable for just the way they do business and everything. I mean, I know that it's my understanding that you have 5 days after working with a client to provide a list to them of every property you've shown them, because this whole procuring cause thing is a little gray area now, right? If you've shown a buyer a property, you have about 5 days to send them a list of every property you've shown them and say that.
So how does that work? Is it because when I represent buyers, I typically either I will put together a tour and I'll send an email with the homes that we're going to see, and then I'll send them that email. Is that basically the list of homes? Is that what they're talking about? Like, what's this whole rule about? You have to provide the buyer with a list for procuring cause, But if they already have the buyer agreement signed,
Yeah, it's gray area. I think it's.
So what should happen is that you should, once you get into the signing of forms of what properties you showed them, you should send that to your broker risk manager and whoever's keeping track of everything.
so you have to submit your file, basically.
You have to, right? And when you are in contract, and obviously the BRBC is in place, all that, but you have to have a way to track these properties. Okay, so let's take the example of that we have a good client who's amazing, we have a great relationship, and we don't have to run into this, right? But let's just say, for example, that for some reason they're exhausted and they're not feeling you, and they feel like maybe they're more of a burden than they want to be with the relationship that you currently have, and they want to go a different direction, right? And they go out and look at a bunch of homes, and all of a sudden, they're with Bob, and Bob just, they're clicking with Bob, they're not clicking with me, right? Bob's, laughs at all their jokes, and so Bob's like the guy.
Yeah.
And then, so this house, 123 Main Street's on her, you showed it one time, and then Bob goes, shows them, but they're all in a good mood, and they're drinking wine, and boom, they're at an offer gets accepted. You go back and see 123 Main Street, wow, I showed them the house, and, they didn't purchase it through me, right? So now you're procuring costs, you have actually ways to, show this. Okay, so what do? You can go back to Bob and say, "Hey, Bob, no more laughing matter. I'm the procuring cause. You owe me some cash, or or even the list or the person you showed." Yeah, I know it's gonna get really complicated, right?
I think so too.
I think that anytime, let's talk about small claims, let's talk about procuring all this. No one wants to go that extra mile and go through that, making things so uncomfortable, right? Because what can happen? Let's put it out there. What can happen? Well, that buyer may turn around and say, Ricardo's a jerk. We didn't get along, and he didn't want to show me houses, and he posted out in the review that you went, they decided to use a different agent because they felt like you were grumpy, and they write this whole, and you're like, I wasn't grumpy, anyway, whatever the case. Gosh, man, I know that we all don't ever want those bad reviews, right? We'll pay anything to get away from it, right? So that's the thing. My stand is like, hey, fish off the hook. I'm not messing with it. I'm good. Then you have the agents like, no way, I'm not letting that go. And you go down that path. And yes, you can. You have the right to, because you're procuring cause, receive compensation. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, more power to you.
Well, what if Bob's on vacation and the agent and the buyers just want to see this property, but they've been working with Bob and they basically lied to you just to show them the property?
They don't lie, do they?
No, nobody lies.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, so did Bob already show them the house and now you're going back to look at the house?
No, Bob didn't show the house. No, so they haven't seen the house yet, but Bob's on vacation. He's coming back in 2 weeks.
No, then you're... okay, so let's say that. So let's say the BRBC that covers Contra Costa County, and you're good for 3 months, but Bob's on vacation, right? During those 3 months. And I think that in that particular case, two things can happen. Sorry, Bob, you're on vacation, but I'm going to give you a referral fee. You're done. So you're able to bridge that. Or Bob, I'm sorry, man, you're out. I knew you're on vacation, so you couldn't perform, and you didn't leave anyone in your place to represent you, so you're out. So I think there's many ways of looking at it, right? Now, does Bob really want to go after that? I don't think so.
Well, what if Bob comes back from vacation, writes the offer, sells the property, you don't hear from the client, and then all of a sudden you look up and Bob sold the property, and
you go back to Bob and you go back to the client. So you have a legal right. The bottom line is you have a legal right.
You have a legal right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're protected. But it goes back to how far do we want to enforce it?
Right.
That's really, how many times do you hear, and it cracks me up all the time, like, I'm going to take you to court. I'm going to take you to small claims. Have you ever been down that rabbit hole? How much time, money,
it's not worth it.
Drains on you, right?
Yeah.
And I know that us sitting here, we're like, I'd rather have a good glass of wine and just call it a day than go after those people. I'm moving forward. And I think that that's where you put your big boy pants on, as they say, and just move and get through it, because I don't want to go through that.
Right.
It's like lesson learned, right? And this is why we have a lot of this stuff floating around right now. And, not to quote Brian Buffini, but if you work with a strong database, people that are your A clients, it won't happen to you.
That's true.
Yep.
And so I'm going to go back to that versus other things.
100%.
Yeah.
Always, but my goal is to always work with people who want to work with me. And I think that, as annoying as all these new rules and these forms and now having to over-explain and just re-explain time and time again, at the end of the day, it is going to kind of weed out the people that you probably don't want to work with anyway. If you're still explaining it well and they're still pushing back and they're still griping and your sellers are still unreasonable and not even willing to hear you because they have their mind made up, probably not somebody that you want to be spending your time with, because who knows what the future is going to bring with them.
I couldn't agree. So I'm getting the listing, and in the first thing, a past client, hey, so I heard the commissions are negotiated, and I said, they are. 100%. I go, but let's do this. Let's focus on what we need to do first, and we'll have that conversation later. Focus on, she couldn't speak enough about her beautiful home that she designed, backyard, front yard, and all the amenities. Commission came up, was like, psh, sign. And it was like a second thought, right? Because they're so excited about selling their house at the best price point that they want to see like the ROI, everything they put under, they want to see it, right? And again, I'm going to go back to, create the great experience and not the friction.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, if you're that realtor that can navigate with clear communication and negotiations with everyone around you, you're going to do great. It's the realtors that don't know how to communicate well that creates all this friction. And we're past that.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Just kind of a last point, and this is hopefully not opening up too big of a conversation, but kind of lastly, so let's say there is a house where a seller is just not willing to offer concessions. They only want to pay their 2.5%, 3%. That's it, no more. And a buyer's coming in, purchase price. Their neighbor sold 3 months ago for $1 million, and now they're not, but their neighbor offered concessions and they're not. Are we seeing that effect at all? Do you think we're going to see that? Is that going to play into it? That was actually my concern before all this happened. I haven't really seen too many effects yet.
Yeah, probably.
But I don't know if there's enough data. Do we think that's going to play a part?
What do you think?
Again, I'm going to go back to the seller, for example, and how well you're able to position the importance of paying a concession. I think if you as an agent aren't able to articulate the important point of, if you don't provide a concession, and what I'm hearing out there is that you probably are not going to get a lot of people looking at your property, right? So let's play devil's advocate. She goes, well, let's go down that road and see what happens. So you do, right? And you come across to me and you say, hey, are you paying any concessions? No, but please submit it and I'll see what I can do for you. So I think you got to be that agent that can play offense and defense.
Yeah.
Right? Get the listing.
I liked your conversation with that particular seller that was like, let me position it like this. If somebody comes in and says, I'll offer you, $600 and with no concessions, but this other person comes in and says, I'm going to offer you $620, but I want you to pay my agent. How would you view that offer?
Okay, I love this conversation because here's where I'm going with it. I would say to my seller, look, typically speaking, the people that are selling their houses at $1 million are providing this concession, 2.5% to 3%, right? So I know that you're commission sensitive, so let's do this. Let's say, for example, if someone does come in and offer you $1 million, I strongly feel that you should pay it 100%, because you're getting a good price for your home, right?
Right.
And this is how I'm going to win them over. But let's say, for example, someone comes in and lowballs you at 800. I don't think they deserve 2.5. And here's the reason why. I don't think they're fighting hard enough for themselves to get a 2.5% commission. They're fighting hard enough to get a 2% commission, or maybe less. How do you feel about that? So I would position it to make my seller in control of the outcome.
Sure.
So 2.5 million, we're in. You're under that, 800,000, you're at 2 less. I don't care.
2 or less, right?
Yeah. And but because my fiduciary responsibility is to my seller.
Sure.
That's the type of agent I want to be.
Right.
And that's how I want to be in control. So they know I'm in control. They have the confidence in me that, that guy knows what he's talking about. Because, at 800,000, first of all, I won't accept it. Second of all, I'm sending a message to the agent. You're 2 all day long. You got to come up to here if you want 2.5. So I think that this is what smart agents should do. Well-rounded agents, tough negotiators should do. Is that, it breaks down to depending on what you submit.
I like that. Yeah.
I think that I know that if you're an agent to too quickly show your hand at 2.5, we're paying 2.5% concession, and they lowball you, and then your client has no other offers.
That's a good point.
Right. That's
Right,
a really
you
good point.
accept 2.5 at 8%, 800, 200, 1,000, and least your client's looking at you like, Jesus.
We talked about this on your Real Talk
We did.
Yeah.
meeting.
I
Yeah,
don't want to do that.
I agree.
So I don't want to show my hand.
That's a good
I don't
point.
wanna show my
That's a
hand.
very good point.
It's a really good point.
So that's how, again, this is just the experience that we have, and that's what we should show.
I think it gives us a lot of different avenues to negotiate and to kind of show our worth and
Our value. Because if you can't have that conversation, and you do, man, I'm thinking this guy's he's pretty well versed, man. He's fluid.
yeah.
So I think we're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. It's been great.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to.
I'm
Thanks
glad
so
that we
much,
could have
Rick.
you. I knew you'd have a lot to say on this topic. I'm really
Yeah.
glad that we could have you. And I hope this, answers a lot of questions for any buyers or sellers out there that maybe don't quite understand what's going on. Get rid of that misconception of what the media is spreading on how this is working, and just kind of deep dives.
Yeah.
So make sure you always stick with a professional. And until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salud.
Salud.